Well, hello everybody. We are excited this week for a very interesting video to give you. Lots of exciting things to happen. I hope we can cram it all into a 20-minute video. I'm looking forward to the first question. We do have a lot to talk about.
Okay, darling. First question is about the silver manipulation. We want to go into that more.
Yes, we've mentioned that quite a few times on our other videos. We've touched on it. We're going to try to hit, just really not even able to hit all of them, but let's hit 4 or 5 of the reasons and the ways that silver is manipulated down. One of the ways that we've talked about before, and you can see this yourself right on the Kitco chart, when a unknown seller will drop many billions of ounces of silver all in 1 minute. Now, what kind of investor is going to buy a billion ounces, which we don't even mine a billion a year, and sell it when the market is closed or fairly closed in the middle of the night, all in 1 minute? If you had an investment, you would sell it a little at a time throughout the day to maximize your return, rather than let's sell it all in 1 minute late at night when the markets are semi-closed and we can get as little as possible. And and when they do put a bunch of paper metal on the market, it picks up sell orders. So people have to protect themselves by putting in a sell order. Well, they're sleeping and this person is crashing it down, picking up these sell orders, which causes it to go even lower. And you can see them, they'll hit it the same time 3 times right in a row. You can see it right on the chart. So that's one of the ways that they manipulate it down. Another way that they manipulate it down is margin calls. So they allow people to put 10% of the cash into the market, and then they'll give them $100. So they put $10 in, here's $100, go invest. Well, if they want to hammer the price down, all they do is change it to $8. So some people come, say, oh, I don't have that $2, I've got millions invested or whatever, and I just don't happen to have $2 on hand to meet the margin call. So they'll sell. So they'll put in sell orders, and then suddenly the price of silver will start to drop. And if they don't get the result they want, they'll lower the margin a little bit more to $7 or $6 until they squeeze people into forcing them to have to sell. And a good example of that is the Hunt brothers. They had tried to do a silver squeeze on the market, and they had bought an astronomical amount, a lot of it on margin. And I think the story goes they were out on a safari or something, and they changed the margin. And they had to come up with this cash, but they weren't able to get a hold of them. And so they had to start selling. The company that was running their ETFs and their shares had to start selling. And that selling drove the price way down.
Way down, because it just once it starts, it just click, 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 goes on down because of the...
Yep, they start picking up other sell orders, and then people get fearful, what's going on, and they say, aha, it was never supposed to be this high or whatever. And
so who do you think, you say they,
okay, very good question.
Who is they?
That is a fascinating question. This is more how they manipulate. So y'all remember back when we had the 08-09 housing crisis, and there was Bear Stearns and JP Morgan, and they each controlled half of the silver market. Well, the government stepped in and picked the winners and the losers. They allowed and pushed Bear Stearns into a collapse, along with Lehman Brothers. But the reason they collapsed Bear Stearns was because Bear Stearns controlled 50% of the silver market. They gave that to JP Morgan. So now JP Morgan had 100% control of the silver market. JP Morgan did not have any actual silver to their name. They just on paper. Now, all of a sudden, over the last 10, 15 years, JP Morgan has acquired, some say, 600 million ounces of actual silver. And it's considered house silver, so it's not actually backing their paper. So that, no, this is my personal silver, but we're just doing this paper thing, manipulation on the side, and they're not connected. Yes, so you can see how the government is in cahoots.
So the government.
Right, with them.
So is it the Fed or the government?
Well,
or both?
We'll use the term deep state because it's so intertwined. It's the government. They all know. The gig is up. Everybody knows. but they don't talk about it. The government doesn't talk about it because everybody's pocketing money. They're pocketing money through these NGOs. We've seen how Elon Musk is finding that all of this money that's going to, for example, we could talk about the Department of Education, the U.S. aid, all these things that we're finding. But they're funneling the money through these NGOs back to the politicians, and mainly the Democrats. It's probably 95, 97%. The Democrats are getting this money back through the NGOs.
Yeah.
It's going to their wives. It's going to their kids.
Yeah.
And so they know, they all know what's coming, but they don't care because the public's not informed.
Right.
So they're not worried about that.
Well, Elon's trying to inform them now.
Trying that.
He's even got his own website. You know.
Right. You can go to the website and you can see where, millions of dollars for condoms for Houthi rebels or, so insane. And here we are trying to fight the Houthi rebels, at the same time. And so, but lots of that money is rerouted back through. And by the way, the number one region that money's funneled through is Ukraine. So a lot of the shenanigans are in Ukraine, and that's why there's this thing going on, this struggle for Ukraine.
Yeah, that's so true.
Kind of got down a rabbit trail on that one. But lots of fun. That's what makes it fun. We can just kind of go down rabbit trails and have fun with it.
Goodness gracious. So they also make laws to manipulate the silver.
Yes. So, for example, one law is a lot of these financial advisors, which we're just doing this for entertainment purposes, and this is not financial advice, because we're not financial advisors. And that's a rabbit trail. So that's an important point. Your age, your income, your risk appetite. I'm not just saying that to protect myself from the YouTube laws.
Right.
I'm telling you, you need to study for yourself.
Yes.
You need to look at your age, your risk appetite, your funds. All these things go into you making your own decision.
Yeah. Someone says, you do you.
Right. So one of the laws is that these financial advisors are not even allowed to advise about gold and silver. And you see Dave Ramsey, he poo-poos gold and silver all the time because there's no yield for them.
Right.
See, there's no yield for them. So they have it, hey, no, don't even talk about it. So we have those kinds of laws in place. And things also like the banks you're not allowed to store your bullion in a safety deposit box. You're not allowed to mail your bullion through the Postal Service under certain insurance. You have to look into that on your own.
Registered. It's got to be registered.
There's other laws. We have a wholesaler that we talk to, and he tells me this story of this guy who went in and bought millions of ounces of paper, and then he tried to take delivery of it, and he found out there were these laws. Well, what they did was they took the LBMA, one of the suppliers, I forget which one it was, to court and won in court, and they put new laws in place to protect the consumer. No, they were laws put in place to separate the retail consumer and protect the bullion dealer, the J.P. Morgan. To protect J.P. Morgan, and called it consumer protection laws. No, they were laws put in place to keep the retail buyer, the multimillionaire retail family office buyer, from pressuring J.P. Morgan into selling them tangible silver in large.
Unbelievable.
Right, and that's how they were able to protect J.P. Morgan, with more laws in place to protect the high-end retail buyer.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
Well, another thing I was going to ask you about, why is the media so quiet about how gold has now reached an all-time high?
Isn't that amazing? That gold it really just broke through 3,000 at an incredible pace. And, it's heading to 3,100. I think it got us really close to 3,090 on Friday, intraday. And, here we are headed to 3,100. And, my prediction has been that if we break through 31, maybe 3,150, just round numbers, that I think it's only going to be 8 months before we hit 4,000.
Yeah.
And we're coming to 3,100 much quicker than I expected,
fast.
A lot quicker than I expected. So I might have to adjust to say round numbers, maybe 3,150, because you have to have a pullback. You have to have, it's not going to go straight up unless there's a black swan, which could happen.
Yeah.
And there's lots of events. We're going to go into those that are causing the price to really jump. But from 31 to 3150, I'm saying 8 months. We'll be at 4,000. And that's not even factoring in any kind of revaluation or Scott Bassett or anything. And those things are coming like October, September. We're looking at those revaluations coming, in my opinion.
Wow. So
Yeah.
people who say, it's too expensive, I can't get in. It's like, well, it's going to be more expensive later.
Yeah, well, we were laughing about last week how I was telling my friends 1,500 and it's going to double from there. And this was like 5 years ago. And so now they're coming in and they're saying, well, it's 3,000. And I said, well, it's going to double again.
Yeah.
And they say, but when? But when? It may be 5 years, but you do not want to be 5 minutes late
That's
for
true.
when it doubles again. And we're seeing it right now. We're running into a real problem this week where we have seen so much buying
Yeah.
this week, these last few days, and it comes to a point where we can't even sell anymore. Not that we don't have it, but it's that we can't take in any more cash.
Yeah.
Because the banks won't take the cash. My wholesaler won't take the cash. You look on YouTube, all coin dealers are complaining about the banks. There are coin dealers on YouTube who have lost their bank account. Our bank has threatened to close our account if we do any more cash. So we have to self-bank with the cash. Cash has to come in and cash has to go out. And we are not going to let ourselves get too much cash on hand. We're
Right.
going to make sure that we're balanced. So if a bunch of people start running in and we get to that number where we're like, we're not going to sell anymore, it's because we have too much cash.
Yeah.
Because if I go deposit it or give it to my wholesaler, they're going to take 3%.
Yeah.
And that's almost half of our margin.
Yeah.
If our margin is less than half of our margin, if our margin is 5%,
Yeah.
and you're giving 3% to the
Yeah.
bank or some way to exchange the cash, you're losing.
That's right.
So we have to be, so it could be shut off just like that.
Yeah.
And it got really, really dangerously close for us just this week,
Yeah.
taking on too much cash.
And you said something's coming this coming week. You're like,
Oh, there's
really
so much going on this week.
concerned about.
Yes,
what
well,
could
we've got the
happen.
silver squeeze that the YouTube and everybody's talking about, which they tried that silver squeeze probably about a year or so ago. I can't remember the date, but the whole AMC short squeeze happened.
Oh, yeah.
And everybody said they turned from AMC to silver. And we had a lot of buyers, new young kids coming in saying, hey, silver squeeze, I want to get some silver. And we've had one or two buyers this week that I think were silver squeeze buyers. So there's this rumor that I think the 31st or something, maybe this weekend, I can't remember, but there's this short squeeze rumor going up. And last time they did it, they got very, very close to collapsing it. Because I was calling my supplier and he was saying 2 months for silver. And the premiums were really jumping. But the people kind of fell away from it. So they're looking at the silver squeeze this week. And I think they're also looking at it this week because of the tariffs. They're talking about the reciprocal,
Yeah.
remember the word reciprocal, tariffs that
April
are coming
2nd.
for April the 2nd. And so anytime people get the slightest bit fearful, they will protect themselves.
Yeah.
They will start to look at, hey, what do I need to do? What do I need to do to protect myself? And it may not be that anything's happening, but when the general public gets fearful, that's when the price of silver and gold really start to go up.
That's true. And we saw another commodity go up high, a jump, was copper.
Oh my goodness, copper.
Copper and gold. And that
Copper's
everything
going.
else was down. The Dow was down. All of the crypto was down. Everything but copper and gold.
Right.
Explain that one.
Well, copper, it's funny, back when we had the 08, 09 crisis and people were out of work. Well, copper turned from an industrial metal to a monetary metal. And you can see that by the way they were pulling the copper gutters off of the building and they were stealing the air conditioning units, just for the copper. You think that air conditioner cost tens of thousands of dollars to have it installed, but yet people were stealing it to go recycle it for the copper. Or they were pulling the gutters off, and you think of the labor and all that's involved to put these gutters up, and they were scrapping it for money. It turned to a monetary metal really, really fast because people were out of work and they needed money. I was building a house one time, and it wasn't my house, but it was a house across the street. A guy went in and cut all the wire out of the house and just had a handful of wire and went to the scrap yard to scrap that. It probably was $5, but it cost thousands of dollars to rewire that entire house.
Yeah.
And that's the problem you have. People don't care about economic consequences
Right.
or what it means to somebody else. They just pull the gutters, pull the wires, pull the air conditioner, and it becomes a monetary metal really, really fast. And the funny thing about that is we don't have any more pennies.
I was going to say that, yeah, President Trump said, don't print any more, don't mint any more pennies.
No more pennies. So the 2025 pennies have really gone up in value because they were only made for a month or so.
Well, they're not copper anymore anyway.
They're not even copper, right,
Yeah.
right. We quit putting copper in them halfway through 82.
Yeah.
So you've got these pennies that aren't even copper, but because they were only made for a month or so, I think they're selling retail like $75 a roll for 2025 pennies. But yeah, you can go back and you cannot say that this is outside my financial reach or gold is outside my financial reach,
Right.
because you can collect the pennies. They're called the memorial pennies from 58 to halfway through 82, just say 81.
Yeah.
Just collect those for the copper that's in them. And if you want to, collect the wheat pennies also. There's copper in those. I think it's 2.5 cents worth of copper in each one now.
Is it 2.5?
I think it's 2.5 cents
Okay.
worth of recyclable copper.
Okay.
And that's a bullion thing right there, that
Yeah.
monetary metal that you can be
Right.
investing in. So don't
Yeah.
tell me you can't do something.
Yeah,
You
the
can
pennies.
pick pennies out of your change and save those as a monetary metal.
That's good. Yeah, people say they can start somewhere.
Right, right.
Oh, and then what about the LBMA saying they're not taking any more orders?
Oh my goodness, the LBMA. Yeah, we've talked a little bit about that the last couple of weeks, how the LBMA was T1, which is T1 day, and then they went to T15 days, and then T30 days. Now they're T60 days. So, and then they started having trouble with their supply. So countries that ship to them stopped shipping to them. And then they went to the refiner and said, hey, double your shift, they've done that before, doubled the shift. The refiner said, we can't double the shift because we don't have the dory to smelt down and make gold and silver. So they only have the one refinery going. They actually had to bring the police out and surround the place because people, I don't know what the problem was, but the police were there surrounding. What's it called in London? It's called the police in London. It's not called police.
Bobbies?
Bobbies. The Bobbies were surrounding the place. So now they're saying no more new orders. No more new orders. They're just going to fill their regular customers, their regular people. And we know what's happening. We talked about it before. That gold's coming back to the U.S. and they're trying to restock the U.S.
And the Fort Knox.
Yes, well, I think that the Treasury is going to buy the gold from the Fed for $42.22 and then revalue it.
Oh, man. So that's why another good reason to be into gold if you can.
Yes, if you can.
Oh, my goodness. And what about, you said that it's going to be April 2nd, there's going to be a lawsuits tax.
We were talking about the taxes and the lawsuits that, we should pause it for a second and we'll look at it. April the 2nd, that's what
April
you were
the
talking.
2nd, yes, sorry.
So it's the taxes and the lawsuits that I wanted to talk about April the 2nd that's coming up. It is the reciprocal tariffs that Trump is putting on, which he's going to offset by drill, baby, drill. And it's the same as the cars. I'm about to go down a rabbit trail real quick. He did a 25% tariff on cars, but then he did a tax deduction on cars made in the U.S.
Yeah.
So you see how we're switching things. So not only are the taxes, the tariffs coming, but they are taxing us or they're tariffing us. And so now we're countering with the Trump tariffs to even the playing field so there won't be this trade deficit. But the other problem is that these other countries are suing our companies like Apple and Chevrolet. And so they're getting these big lawsuit settlement money. So we've got to bring these companies back to the U.S. so they can get away from those constant lawsuits,
Yeah.
the legal expense, and then the having to pay these fines. So
Yeah.
companies are anxious to come back to the U.S. to get away
Right.
from these EU taxes and lawsuits that they're having to deal with.
Yes, that would be great. And another thing, Trump has said that silver is the most undervalued.
Wow.
Isn't that something?
Yeah, so he tweeted out, it may have been a while back, but I
Yeah.
refreshed my memory on it today. You know, Trump came out and said the most undervalued asset is silver. And we talked about how it's manipulated down. You can
Yeah.
see the rubber band. You can
Oh,
see
my
it being
goodness,
stretched. You
yes.
can feel it being stretched when you look at these things.
Yeah.
You know, when you understand how JP Morgan has 100% control and they're stocking up. You know, they
Oh,
had
my
zero in
gosh.
08, 09, but now they
Yeah.
have six. You can see all these things.
Yeah.
And we're looking at them and we're talking about them to try to let people, try to help them make a decision on their own, educate them, do this for fun. We enjoy doing it.
And silver is still down. I mean, it's still, like you said, undervalued, but it's much easier to get into silver than it is to gold.
Yes, nowadays the average person can easily get into silver, and I still think gold's going to double. I think silver's going to way
Yeah.
outperform.
Oh,
But
yeah.
you know, you have disadvantages, so each person has to look at their own situation. The weight, I can barely carry $10,000 in silver, but I've held $250,000 in gold in my hand. I can easily hold that in my hand. So
Right.
each person has to look at these things and make up their own mind.
Right, that's so true. And then we want to go on. I was going to ask you about the rants, the stuff that we faced this
Yes,
week with
oh,
on
I've
the
got
farm.
a little rant.
And it just shows the
Yes. Well,
the frustration,
The
and
frustrations
and
of
the government and what they're doing. Yeah.
Right, right. Well, I hear a lot of these other coin dealers. You know, I watch a lot of the YouTube videos, and I see them kind of disparaging the collector coin market. And there's two types of collector coin market. There's this scam that's going on where they try to talk people into quote unquote numismatic collectors coins. But the true collectible coins are 1933 and older. And I
Yeah.
prefer the slabbed ones. I prefer PCGS. That's just
Yeah.
me and my preference. And I'm encouraging people to keep in mind the government and the kind of things they can do. And I'm going to go on a rant and tell you one example. We have a small hobby farm and we raise everything you can think of. And we've got sheep and they're giving birth this week. And so we've
Yeah.
got these little lambs. And we've always, in the past, years ago, we would just go down to the hardware store and pick up a small amount of
An old Tractor
antibiotics.
Supply. Yeah.
Right, for mastitis, which is fairly common in older sheep. And so, well, last year, you had to buy a whole box of it. You couldn't buy just one $6 tube of it. You had to buy a $70 box. So this year, we go to get it, and now you have to have a vet's approval.
A prescription.
Prescription, $250 for this vet prescription. And then you got to buy the product. So now you're way over $300, getting somewhere close to $400 to get this simple medicine that used to cost $6.
Yeah,
So you're
one
sitting there, you're
single
holding
dose.
this little lamb, and you're trying to feed it, and you're trying to take care of the mastitis, and you're not allowed to have a simple antibiotic
Yeah.
because of confiscation. Really, it's what it is, confiscation. And then, you know, you take our wholesaler up here in Maryland.
Yeah.
They're looking at tax now. They're going to be
Oh, I
taxed
know,
to
the
sell
sales
their
tax.
products. So all of
Yeah.
a sudden, their entire livelihood, a business that they've had since the early 70s, is in jeopardy because every state around them, Delaware, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Virginia, doesn't have any tax on monetary metals.
Right.
So they're looking at maybe their entire business because of the government intrusion. So now, when
Yeah.
you think about your gold and silver, you could be diversified a little bit into non-intrusive metal and have the numismatic 1933 and older, which is excluded from confiscation in the executive order 6201, I believe it is, Roosevelt wrote.
1930 something.
So you need to
Yeah.
be outside. You need to have that as a diversification.
Yeah.
You know, and same with like maybe buying Canadian maple leafs that are 4.9s. 4.9s is the international standard. So maybe you
It's
want
foreign, so they can't confiscate
Right, it's
it.
foreign, so maybe it wouldn't be confiscatable.
Yeah.
So I'm just telling you that
Yeah.
that's a possibility. Don't think that it's not a possibility. Things
Yeah.
go really, really haywire. you want to be diversified into every kind of possible scenario.
And to be in the 90%.
90%. Wow,
90% silver.
90%. I'm glad you brought that
up.
We
call it the constitutional
There's hardly
silver.
ain't no premium on 90% right now. Why in the world wouldn't you buy 90% right now?
Yeah.
You know, there's 7.23 ounces in each $10 roll. So that puts, at $250, that puts the silver price at $34.50. It's almost the spot price for 90%.
Yeah.
No premium.
Yeah.
So, I mean, wow, that's a sleeper.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, yes.
Oh, my goodness.
Excellent video. Good
Yes,
questions. We
thanks,
so enjoyed
darling.
it. Please comment.
Yes.
Let us know what we can do. Everybody, be blessed.
Blessings, everybody.